We're just one day away until it's football time in Tennessee. And can the Volunteers be a part of a major upset in SEC play this season? We'll tell you right here on Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into it. This is Locked On Vols, your go-to Tennessee Volunteers podcast each and every day. It is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'm your host, Eric Kane. I do radio in Knoxville, Tennessee at 99.1 thesportsanimal.com. I write for the rival site covering the University of Tennessee. That is volquest.com. And, of course, I'm your host right here on Locked On Vols each and every day. As I said in the open, man, we got one more day until it's football time in Tennessee. We've got today's show. Tomorrow's show is going to be a game day show. And then Friday's show, of course, we're breaking down what is Tennessee's likely a big-time win against the Ball State Cardinals. Again, that's coming up in just a couple hours now, a little over a day away here on a Thursday night. So today's show, we're going to break down a Saturday Down South article discussing the 10 biggest upsets in SEC play this year. Tennessee involved in 2 of them, one of which you're going to love. The other you're not going to like so much, so we're going to break down and react to that. Josh Ward coming on for a little Ward Wednesday, getting you set for Ball State. And then in segment number 3, Athlon Sports, game-by-game predictions for the University of Tennessee. Where do they have the Vols finishing, and who do they have the Volunteers losing to this season? All that and more coming up here on today's show as my microphone just decides to get really, really hot at some point in time. That's very, very annoying. But without further ado, let's jump into it. This is your Wednesday edition of Locked On Vols. So we're talking upsets, Saturday Down South upsets in SEC play this season. And this is an article written by Connor O'Gara. And it kind of breaks down the 10 biggest upsets in SEC play so far this season. He wants to point out at the top of the article, and I don't blame him. I would take a victory lap as well. He listed 3 at the beginning of last year, and he nailed all 3 of them. Missouri beating Florida, Arkansas beating A&M, and A&M beating Alabama. He does come back around and say that, hey, I did switch the Alabama A&M prediction the week of, but nonetheless. You go down the list, Missouri beats Kansas State. That's at number 10. Kentucky beats Florida. That's at number 9. South Carolina beats Florida. That's at number 8. Missouri beats Kentucky. That is at number 7. That'd be a monster upset. You got Mississippi State beating Ole Miss. That'd be a big-time upset. But again, you got a good quarterback in Will Rogers. So that's not out of the world of possibilities. And then you go down to number 5. You got Mississippi State again beating LSU. That'd be a shocker. Then you're at number 4. Here we go. Number 4. South Carolina beating Tennessee. It's a game that we discussed a little bit last week, and saying, hey, is Tennessee a lock to win over the Gamecocks in Columbia? You know, that's late in the season. We don't know much about South Carolina right now. We're going to learn a whole lot more, don't get me wrong, but that's kind of hard to predict right now. Tennessee's got the better roster, of course, but what does Tennessee look like later in the season? What does South Carolina look like later in the season? Of course, you are going to go on the road in that football game. South Carolina beating Tennessee, that's at number 4 on Saturday Down South's 10 biggest SEC upsets of the year. This is the write-up for this game. In a battle of red-hot teams that are clicking on all cylinders for the passing game, South Carolina's November mojo continues. Hendon Hooker and Spencer Rattler go back and forth in a game that has plenty of NFL eyes on it. But the difference is Hooker is asked a little too much to bail the Vols out on the road. A ruckus South Carolina crowd fuels a couple of late defensive stands. Jordan Birch and Jordan Strachan both get in the backfield to force key stops. The Gamecocks close out the home slate with their most impressive win at Williams-Brice of the Shane Beamer era. So they have South Carolina beating Tennessee late in the year. Again, we've discussed this. That's not out of the realm of possibility. I don't see this right now, but again, those late games, especially on the road, they're so hard to predict right now in preseason because, that's 11, 12 weeks away. That's a long time away, and a lot can happen. Case in point, look at how South Carolina started last season. Look at how South Carolina ended last season. Look at how Florida started. Look at how Florida ended. You see my drift there. So that's at number 4. South Carolina beating Tennessee. That's not fantastic, right? That's not what you want to see. Well, We mosey on down the list here. Number 3, LSU beats A&M. That wouldn't be a shocker to me. Florida beats A&M. There's talent on that Florida roster. Again, that wouldn't shock me whatsoever. There's some more up here, like Mississippi State beating LSU, Mississippi State beating Ole Miss, Missouri beating Kentucky would be the biggest shocker to me. South Carolina beating Florida wouldn't really shock me. Kentucky beating Florida would not shock me. So really, this list is not, I don't agree with a lot of it, to be completely honest. But number 3, LSU beats A&M. Number 2, Florida beats A&M. And number 1, Tennessee beats Georgia. Again, when we're going through our scouting reports and breaking down the Bulldogs and breaking down every other team on Tennessee's schedule, we talked about this possibility, right? It's unlikely, in my opinion, but it would be monumental. It would be just incredible for Josh Heupel and your number 2 to take down the reigning national champions and the leader of the SEC East, right? Can you do it? Absolutely. When you have this offense that's clicking on all cylinders and scoring 40 points a game and running tempo, it smacks you in the face. And if you don't let up and get a couple of stands, create a couple of turnovers, anything can happen. That's why I'm always so adamant about, with this offense, you're going to be in every single game. You're going to have an opportunity to win every single football game because of the way you run this offense, the way it was clicking middle to last half of last season for Tennessee. So if Tennessee just catches Georgia on one of those days, I'm not saying it won't happen. I just feel like it's a little unlikely. Here's the write-up from Saturday down south. Tennessee beats Georgia. I know. Tennessee is 4-35 against Alabama, Florida, and Georgia in the post-Philip Fulmer era. Actually, they say Phil Fulmer. I hate when people say Phil Fulmer. That's not his name. It's Philip. That includes 16 consecutive losses to them, 5 of which come from Georgia. So why is this time any different? Tennessee's offense, point blank. The Vols had the formula to put pressure on the UGA's defense. Hendon Hooker attacks downfield with Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt, and that young Georgia defensive line can't pressure with 4 against a Tennessee offensive line that returns 4 starters. Josh Heupel's offense stretches the field with pace and balance. Georgia can't adjust until it's too late. Stetson Bennett, even against a porous Vols defense, can't quite rally the troops back late, facing obvious throwing situation. Tennessee pulls off the upset of the year in the SEC. Now, wouldn't you like that? I mean, I think everybody liked that, right? I'd be happy for you. I'd be happy for the podcast because business would be booming. This town would be on fire. Radio shows in the morning would be lit. Yeah, I just said lit. It'd be awesome, right? So, we'll have to see. Where's Georgia health-wise at this point in time? More so, than anything, where's Tennessee health-wise entering this football game? Georgia's got depth. Tennessee's improved in depth. But still, you like Georgia's depth a whole lot better than you like Tennessee's depth right now. So, again, because of this offense, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Last time Tennessee won against the Big Three was in 2016, Tennessee beat Florida that year as well. But Tennessee also won on the road at Georgia with the Hail Mary, Josh Dobbs, and all that. So, interesting little article here. Saturday Down South does have Tennessee being upset on the road at South Carolina late in the season. But SDS has Tennessee beating Georgia, which would be one of the biggest upsets in the country probably throughout the 2022 campaign. So what say you? Tennessee and upsets. Are you buying that there's a chance Tennessee could lose to South Carolina, or are you buying more the prediction of Tennessee upsetting Georgia during the midseason? Compelling conversations here and a good article again from Saturday Down South's Connor O'Gara if you want to check it out. So wanted to bring that here to the pod, discuss some interesting takes. We've talked about every single one of these games all offseason long. Like Josh Heupel said in the Monday press conference, all right, we've talked. It's time to go play. But I did want to bring this out here just in case something does happen to that effect. And we can go back and say, well, hey, SDS called it, and we discussed it right here on Locked On Vols. So wanted to bring that to the show real quick. Josh Ward coming to the show next here on Locked On Vols for a little Ward Wednesday action. But first, BetOnline.net, it's your number one source for all your pro and college betting needs and sports information this season. Find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's opening week games. Week 1 is here, folks. BetOnline is also your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including Major League Baseball. It's heating up, baby. We're about in September. MMA, boxing, and golf. Head on over to the website today or use your mobile device. Learn about all the latest trends and all the action. BetOnline It is where the game starts.
All right, it is game week, but that doesn't take away from Award Wednesday. Josh Ward coming back on the show. And Josh, would you say we're getting closer? I mean, we are literally just a little over 24 hours away.
Yeah, I think, Eric, as we sit here and talk about a game coming up tomorrow, it feels close. So, yeah, compared to last week, closer.
And compared to the week before that, big news since last time we spoke. Brew McCoy deemed eligible by the NCAA. Yep. Obviously, that could mean a whole lot for this Tennessee offense, but I think you feel a little bit better about that wide receiver position and the offense overall now compared to the last time we spoke on Wednesday.
Yeah, what fans are happy about is that we're not asking, is Tennessee closer to finding out if Brew McCoy is going to be able to play against Ball State or this season. Getting that wrapped up last week, being able to go through game week for the most part, having no questions about Brew McCoy's status, that has to help mentally. Coaches don't like distractions. So the fact that it's not a distraction is good. The fact that it's not hanging over Brew as he's trying to prepare and practice and go through everything and classes have started up, that's a good thing. And then he's a good player, one of the more talented players on the team, takes pressure off some of the other wide receivers. It helps out Hendon Hooker at quarterback. So it was just great news for Tennessee. We'll see what the overall impact is, but Brew has a chance to make a big impact quickly on Tennessee's offense.
Yeah, I would agree. And Tennessee also put out its depth chart yesterday. A couple oars, some bracketed starters and whatnot. Major takeaways from Tennessee's depth chart from your eyes?
Well, honestly, nothing was that surprising to me. I think you can look at a couple of those spots and you wonder, okay, well, who's really going to emerge a defensive tackle with Garland and Eason next to Amari Thomas on the depth chart? Juwan Mitchell being listed ahead of Aaron Beasley. I think that's been a question of, okay, who plays a bigger role alongside Jeremy Banks? Banks is a leader there on the defensive side for Tennessee. No Brandon Turnage on the depth chart. That surprised me a little bit, I guess, but I think that comes back to the talk of August about all the depth that Tennessee has in the secondary. How many high-level players do they have? That needs to be shown, but I think they feel better about the number of players they can count on, and Tamarian McDonald being listed ahead of Wesley Walker at star, I think that backs up all the buzz that has surrounded McDonald's name for almost all of camp.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, what a story for Tamarian McDonald. There's no or there. There's no bracket. He is the starter at the star position, and I still think Wesley Walker is going to play a big impact here. He'll play some star, but I'm in the camp of thinking, all right, if Trayvon Flowers and or Jalen McCullough need a breather, get hurt, whatever, you slide Wesley Walker back there. The coaches love his football IQ, and it very well may be a Danico Slaughter or Andre Turrentine that go in first, but I could see Wesley Walker being a swing guy from star to safety all season long.
Yeah, I'm expecting Walker to play an important role, but I think this is an example of he comes in having played a lot at Georgia Tech. He's a fourth-year college player, and that creates legitimate competition on the practice field. Excuse me. I think the same applies to Andre Turrentine, who may not factor in a big role yet in the secondary, but he did on the practice field, and he was competing at Ohio State. So competing at Tennessee was going to be no shock or surprise to him in terms of what it takes. And as the season goes along, we might see Turrentine and D. Williams coming in as a JUCO transfer, Kamal Haddon being a year older, Christian Charles being a year older. Development, I think, is there. Now, again, does that mean they're going to go become a top half of the league secondary? I don't know that. But in the bowl game, when Alontae Taylor's not out there, had some real concerns about who do we put on the field. I don't think that's the question of, okay, can we count on this guy? I think there's a lot more confidence from Willie Martinez and Tim Banks in the number of players they can rely on in the defensive backfield.
Talking with Josh Ward. He is Josh_Ward on Twitter, previewing Tennessee's game with Ball State. Josh, I always like to respect the opponents, never want to underestimate the opponent, but I mean, this kind of is what it is. Ball State's not a good football team, a lot of turnover, a new quarterback that's barely played any football in 5 years. Bring back two receivers that are pretty talented, but an offense that was not productive, a defense that was okay but lost a lot as well. What are you seeing as strengths for Ball State, the challenges that could present themselves to Tennessee, and ultimately, how do you see this football game going tomorrow?
Yeah, we'll see defensively up front. Can they present some challenges against the Tennessee offensive line that should have size, strength advantage, and experience with four starters coming back? And There is the left tackle question. So can Tennessee do largely what it wants to up front? I mean, that conversation can apply to both sides because you have either newcomers or guys playing bigger roles. It's probably the more correct way to describe it on the defensive line. But line of scrimmage, you want to control that against a team like Ball State ahead of playing Pittsburgh, which is really experienced and well thought of on the lines of scrimmage, both offensively and defensively. Offensively for Tennessee against Ball State, I think Tennessee's receivers should be able to do kind of what they want to. I expect Tennessee to take some shots down the field, see if Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman can make some plays. I'll be curious to see how exactly they involve Brew McCoy because he can do different things on the field, catch and run different type of routes. And then Jacob Warren, I think he and Princeton Fant can create some matchup advantages with their strength, especially Warren. So I think Tennessee will be able to do largely what it wants to against a Ball State team that is not projected to be a great team. And then from a talent standpoint, obviously Tennessee has advantages all over the field.
All right, so it's going to be a big-time football game, at least kicking off the season tomorrow, and I can't believe it's finally here, so looking forward to that. Josh, I want to get your thoughts on one other thing, and this is not Tennessee-related, but you had Jim Harbaugh of Michigan saying, I'm going to start one quarterback in week 1, and then I'm going to start another quarterback in week 2, and it's biblical. That's why I'm doing it. Very strange. College football is weird, and that's why we love it. What do you think about Michigan and Jim Harbaugh deciding he's going to go that way with his quarterbacks? Is it simply to keep the backup in school? I thought that was super, super weird.
Because it was super, super weird, but it's Jim Harbaugh, and we kind of expect the weird. He's a very good coach. I think a couple of years ago, during the COVID year, Michigan just had a terrible season, played 6 games. It was kind of a throwaway year, but the conversation, because they hadn't beaten Ohio State and they hadn't won the Big Ten, had shifted to, maybe Jim Harbaugh's just not that good anymore. And he proved last year, no, he's still a really good coach. That doesn't make him not strange. And handling the quarterback position this way is very abnormal, and I wouldn't expect it to work out, but I would also guess that at some point they're choosing a guy and maybe the other quarterback can play a secondary role. That would almost be expected within this offense. But alternating starters game to game, I don't think that's something you can do over the course of the season unless the guy that you choose struggles and you kind of go back and forth, and at that point your team's probably going to struggle because of it.
Josh Ward, football season is here, and you guys are obviously breaking it all down today and tomorrow leading up to the game, and you and Swain on Josh and Swain, 99.1 The Sports Animal, noon to 3. Y'all will have us all covered on Friday, recapping everything that happened coming up tomorrow in the football game.
Yep, 12 to 3. Swain and I are there every day, and Swain, Daniel Hood, and I will have our game day show in the middle of the game day all day lineup on the Sports Animals. So all football all the time on Josh and Swain.
Josh, thanks so much, man.
You got it. Thank you.
All right, we got a final segment here of this Wednesday edition of Locked On Vols. Really do appreciate you guys for hanging out with me here today and making Locked On Vols your first listen each and every day. Thank you so much for continuing to subscribe on your listening platform, and of course, subscribing and following along on the YouTube page. We continue to climb past 3,000 subscribers. Can't thank you guys enough for that. Really, really do appreciate it. All right, let's get into an Athlon Sports article where the crew goes game by game and break down Tennessee's schedule. You've got columnist Stephen Lassen, who's a friend of the show. He's joined the podcast before. You've got Mark Ross, and then you've got Rob McVeigh. And these guys go game by game and break down Tennessee's games each and every way of the schedule. So all three of these guys have Tennessee at an 8-4 record. All three of these guys have Tennessee sweeping the first 3 games of the season against Ball State, at Pitt, and against Akron. Stephen Lassen, Mark Ross, and Rob McVeigh all have Tennessee winning in week 2 against Pittsburgh. You go on to week number 4, the SEC opener at home in Knoxville against Florida. Stephen Lassen has Tennessee breaking the trend, beating Florida, winning in that football game. Mark Ross has Tennessee winning against the Gators in that football game. Rob McVeigh has Florida winning that football game. And again, that is not a bad pick. Again, I think Tennessee's roster is better. I think Tennessee is ahead of the rebuild here. I think Tennessee is playing at home. I think Tennessee should win that football game against Florida. But how many times have we continued to talk over the years about Tennessee should have beat Florida. Tennessee should have beat Florida. And for some reason, Tennessee just can't find a way to beat the Gators, just much like Kentucky and Tennessee. You know, Tennessee's kind of had its way with Kentucky, even when Kentucky's had really, really good ball clubs. So Stephen Lass and Mark Ross have Tennessee going 4-0 in the month of September. If Tennessee goes 4-0 in the month of September, I'm in the belief that Tennessee will go 9-3. Again, I told you all three of these guys have Tennessee as an 8-4 record, so I'll be intrigued to see what game they have as a hiccup later in the season. Rob McVay, meanwhile, has Tennessee leaving the month of September with a 3-1 record and a loss to Florida. All right, so some notables. So far, they all say Tennessee wins at Pitt. 2 of the 3 say Tennessee beats Florida. All 3, after the bye week, traveling to Baton Rouge, have Tennessee falling to LSU. That is just a game that feels like it is a loss from the get-go, and everybody, including myself, can be completely wrong. And I hope I'm wrong. I do. But everybody just feels like that is a loss on the road after the bye week at LSU. Stephen Lassen, Mark Ross, Rob McVay all have that as a loss. All 3 of them the following week have Tennessee losing to Alabama. It's not really much of a shocker, right? So 2 of these guys had Tennessee starting 4-0. Then losing their next 2 opponents in LSU and Alabama. Tennessee sitting at 4-2. And of course, Rob McVay, who had Tennessee at 3-1. Tennessee now sits at 4-3 after the, or 3-3 after going 3-0 to start the season, and then losing to Florida, LSU, and Alabama straight. So Tennessee bounces back according to all 3 of these columnists. They beat UT Martin, duh. All 3 of these guys say Tennessee wins against Kentucky at home, so that's good. All 3 of these guys have Tennessee losing to Georgia, and that is the 4th loss for a couple of these dudes, or really for Rob McVay. That is a 4th loss for Rob McVay, as Tennessee currently sits, according to his projections, at 5-4 on the season. So Georgia lost to Mark Ross and Stephen Lassen, and then a Georgia loss to Rob McVay. You move on to Missouri. All 3 of the guys have Tennessee sweeping. South Carolina is the 4th loss for Stephen Lassen. South Carolina is the 4th loss for Mark Ross, but Rob McVay has Tennessee winning on the road in Columbia at South Carolina. So was kind of wondering where that 4th loss would come, since we know the predictions for these guys are all 8-4, and it is at South Carolina. Much like we spoke on earlier in the show, that Saturday Down South article talking about the 10 biggest upsets in SEC play this year. They're predicting South Carolina, or I guess they're guessing potentially that South Carolina could beat Tennessee in upset fashion. Stephen Lassen and Mark Ross both believe the Gamecocks will get the Volunteers this year. And then all 3 of the guys have Tennessee beating Vanderbilt on the road in Nashville to conclude the 2022 campaign, resulting in an 8-4 record, 8-4 record, and an 8-4 record. I'm not going to read everything from all 3 of these guys, but they do give a little bit of a write-up. I'll read Stevens because, again, he's been on the show before. This is from Stephen Lassen. Tennessee showed marked improvement in Coach Josh Heupel's first season in 2021, and I expect that trend to continue this fall. A high-powered offense was arguably the best reason for the turnaround last season. If it wasn't, then what was, right? The combination of Heupel, receiver Cedric Tillman, and Velus Jones Jr., who's now in the NFL, and quarterback Hendon Hooker helped the Volunteers increase their scoring average from 21.5 to 39.3 points per game last season. With 8 starters back, the bulk of Tennessee's offense is set to return this fall. However, can the 2022 group reach another level, or will this unit simply replicate last year's production? If they simply replicate last year's production, I think that's okay, in my opinion. Now, they need to get better in short yardage situations in the red zone on 3rd down. I get all that. But if you simply replicate 216 yards on the ground per game, over 440 yards of offense, and 39 points per contest, I think that's okay. I would take that. How about you? You want to get better, but statistically, I'll take that route again, wouldn't you? Steven goes on. Few question marks remain on offense, but the outlook is different on defense. Tennessee gave up 29.1 points per game a season ago and struggled versus the run, giving up more than 200 yards a contest in SEC play. Heupel needs to recruit more difference makers on that side of the ball, but 6 returning starters provide a good foundation for improvement. Swing games at Pitt, LSU, and South Carolina are tricky, but Tennessee gets Florida and Kentucky at home. I think the Volunteers stumble versus Georgia and Alabama and drop 2 of the swing matchups to finish 8-4. And that's kind of how I see it. I don't necessarily have Tennessee losing those same games, but that's kind of how I see it as well. You've got a good combination of swing games. I think Tennessee takes care of business at home usually, and that means Florida. I understand that. But stubbing his toe on the road at Florida or at LSU, and then we'll see about South Carolina. So that was the write-up from Stephen Lasson. But I wanted to bring that to the show again. Athlon Sports has Tennessee going 8-4 and kind of breaking down game by game. Nobody likes Tennessee at LSU. Nobody likes Tennessee in Alabama. Nobody likes Tennessee in Georgia. They have the Gamecocks, they have the Bulldogs, the Tigers, and the Crimson Tide winning all of those games. One of the columnists has Florida beating Tennessee. Two of the columnists have South Carolina beating Tennessee. So interesting. All this is going to be put in the review mirror come tomorrow as Tennessee officially kicks off the 2022 campaign. All right, that will do it here for a Wednesday edition of Locked On Vols. Thank you so much for tuning in each and every day and making Locked On Vols your first listen, guys. We're almost here. Tomorrow I'm going to say, guys, we're here. We are here. We're almost here. We got one more day until it is football time in Tennessee, and we're going to have a special show for you guys tomorrow to kick off your game day coverage. So I can't wait for that. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the YouTube page. Follow me on Twitter at _Caner and at Locked On Vols, and listen wherever you find your podcast, Odyssey app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, all that good stuff as well. And now that you're done here with Locked On Vols, making that your first listen, check out Locked On SEC. Make Locked On SEC your second listen right behind here, us, Locked On Vols, which, of course, is your first listen each and every day. That's going to do it here for today. Can't wait. Enjoy your Wednesday and just know one more sleep, and then it's football time in Tennessee.